Welcome back to another episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. Today, I've got Jen Dalton on, and she is an expert in the branding space, and I'm so excited for this conversation. There's a lot of different ways we can take this conversation, but Jen, to kick things off, do you mind just introducing yourself and telling everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me on as a guest. I appreciate it. I am Jen Dalton. My company is Brand Mirror. My tagline, just to give you a little bit more background, is reflect, stand out. And so I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, CEOs, individuals, really reflecting on who they are, their purpose, their why, and then how do they really position themselves through messaging, targeting the right audience, building the right business to stand out. So I've been doing this for 13 and a half years, coming into my 14th year. And so, yeah, I love all things branding.
I love that. And I would love to kind of start the conversation and just hear your perspectives on as you've kind of worked with so many people over the last 13 years, right? What are some of the big mistakes or misses that you see creative business owners kind of make when it comes to their branding?
Such a great question. And I do take off the last few weeks of the year as well. And I don't do meetings, and I totally do business strategy work. And I do it throughout the year, but it's like a break where I can really think about the new year, not necessarily new you, but does anything need to shift? And I think for entrepreneurs, for business owners, whatever your industry, and obviously for sure in the creative and photography space, some people might see that as an extra or nice to have. For me, from a personal brand standpoint and a branding standpoint, photography is critical. And yet we still want to message it in a way that positions the value, right? Getting the right pictures that capture the right moment, that capture the story, really can set your business apart on your website. It can set your social media apart. Obviously, we know the value of photographers for wedding. That's huge. And in the business space, it's really come a long way. I think people really understand more and more, whether it's a CEO getting headshots of their leadership team for the website, because you want to know who you're doing business with, you want to see their face, or whether it's someone like me, a solopreneur. Every year or two, I'm getting new pictures, right? Me sitting at a desk coaching someone, me speaking up on stage, right? All of these pictures create evidence of a brand. And so I think for individuals or businesses who are trying to update their personal brand, photography is huge. And they often misunderstand or just undervalue that. I think the other thing that I see a ton of business owners refreshing right now is their messaging. A lot of times I think of messaging in a pyramid. I like threes, so I'm gonna talk through this. The base is sort of functional messaging, right? An example would be, I'm a photographer. I will come take your picture. Well, yes, and so will other photographers. So what we have to do now is distinguish, well, what's the value add? So that's sort of the second level. Describe the value add of working with someone. Obviously, a huge thing is to save someone time. A huge thing might be, hey, don't do a selfie for a family photo. You want to capture that memory in high quality, high definition, right? Get a professional. And then the emotional sort of top tier message is, how do you make someone feel? One of the photographers I work with, she does headshot photography for career professionals. She does boudoir photography, and she also does, I'll call Vanity Fair photography. And so, I went to do a session with two of my girlfriends. It was like a girls' day out. We totally had mimosas. The music was playing. So that was number one, was we had to relax, right? Because lots of times people freak out when they get their picture taken. She helped us get relaxed. We got our makeup done, our hair done. And then the photography was amazing. We looked like we could be on the cover of Vanity Fair. I mean, I don't know that that's really true, but we felt that way. And that's really that third tier, that top tier of messaging is, how do people feel when they work with you? You want them to love working with you. You want them to feel at ease. You have to build that know and trust factor. So I think a lot of people undervalue the verbiage, right? And the videos, right? And the photos, like the visual part and the verbiage part. So as people are thinking of refreshing or tweaking their brand, go back and look at the words, go back and look at the pictures. Do they really tell the right story? Not for you, but for your audience. Because the audience needs to hear it in words that resonate with them. So I think that's the third challenge. People use messaging in ways like, I have to tell you this. Well, sure, but it might not be the words that resonate with your client base. So those are the three things I would do. look at your words, look at your pictures, and look at the messaging and is it resonating with that audience.
I love that. And I think too that that last piece, the audience piece, I think that's a huge key, especially when we just live in just like such a loud world. Like we're constantly being connected. There's so much messaging going on. And I think the part I see a lot of photographers get like trapped in is kind of this echo chamber, right? Like you're kind of used to consuming all this content. And so you kind of lose your voice because you're like, oh, is this like the messaging I need to use? Like light and airy or,
Mm,
candid or timeless or, all the things, right? So I guess kind of on that topic of your audience, how would you help someone kind of figure out what messaging they need for what audience, like defining your audience, making sure that it's the right messaging, like knowing where to connect with them best. Like, do you have any sort of like process you have or advice you would have for someone who maybe feels like they don't really know what that should look like for them?
sure. Although we're in audio and even if you're watching video, potentially, one of the things that is tricky is to talk through a framework. But I'll share a framework that I use. I teach Entrepreneurship 101 at Georgetown for a group of veterans. And so we're always talking about how do you make money, your business model. We're talking about messaging and the value proposition. And so one of the most important things to do is to think through who do you think your customer segments are? I think it should not be 1,000, right? And it's certainly not everyone. I recommend picking 3 to 5 customer segments. And let's pick one. Let's say senior executive or someone moving into the executive level at a company. What job do they need done when it comes to photography? They need a picture that makes them look approachable. They need somebody to come maybe to their office and take a picture because they don't have time to leave the office. They need somebody who will be, the photo can work on LinkedIn, right? It can work. Maybe they're thinking about writing a book. It could work on the back of a book. Maybe it's their boss has said, you need to go get on a board. So they need a picture that works for sort of a board website, like a nonprofit board. And so then you want to step back and think about, well, what are the pain points for them? It takes time. They don't know what to wear. They don't know what they're doing. They're worried. They don't ever like how they look in a picture, all of these things. And that's sort of one half of the value proposition. The other half, though, is as the business provider, the service provider, what are your actual services? And you want to do these exercises separately. You're not trying to force them to match, right? You do the customer audience, you define who it is, what they need, the problems they have that you're doing for them or you're solving for them. And then on your side, you list out your services. Do you come to their work? Do you have a studio where they can come? Maybe that's what they want. Maybe they don't want anybody at work to know they're getting a headshot. Maybe they're thinking about leaving the company, but they want to look better, right? Like you got to think through these things. And then what are you doing? Do you send them a 1-pager in advance? Here are the things you should wear. Do you do a 10-minute prep call and they can show you their outfits, right? What are the things you're offering? And it's not everything. It's 3 or 4 things that really help add value to the customer. And then you want to look at the 2 sides of the equation and go, is this a good fit? Right? Are my services and the pain points I solve the ones that this client needs solved? And oftentimes, like price point might be one, but if someone's asking you about price, they may not be the right fit out of the gate. It depends. If they're saying, hey, would $10,000 work for a headshot? I'd be like, yeah, of course, I will come take your headshot. But if they're underbidding or you're losing money, like that's not really the right customer for you. And so I would look at value proposition canvas. I would look at what are the jobs your client is paying you to do? How well do you do them? And is there a fit between them? I think a lot of times we launch a business because we're excited, because we're passionate, and we don't always think about who am I the best fit for based on my expertise, based on what I bring to the table, and is it really going to solve their problem? So that's probably one tool that I'm a big fan of that I would use to start.
I love that. And I think just like having a framework like that where you can really look for that overlap, that's kind of your sweet spot. I think so often, and kind of what I was talking about before, is like this echo chamber, and you just kind of look so closely at what everyone else is doing. You kind of forget, like, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that
Yes.
I'm trying to offer? And how does this actually align with who I'm trying to work with? Because the people you're seeing online, and this is where I think it just gets so messy, they might not be serving your exact client, right? And so by trying to copy their messaging or, just kind of consuming so much of the same thing, that's where you're gonna get lost in the wind, right? So I really
Absolutely.
also just like recommend like finding ways to look outside of just like the little, community that you're a part of or the people who are doing the same thing that you're a part of and look for outside ways to learn and outside ways
Mm,
to create. And this is kind of related, kind of not, but like one piece of advice that I was given, because like we also do video, is just to like watch some like really solid films and like don't just look at
yes.
wedding films, like look at what stories are you trying to tell through like watching really quality films and like how do you want to take that and bring that into like what's inspiring your work? And so kind of in
Mhm.
line with that is like that overlap of like what you're doing, what is needed and what like inspires you to try to like mix those things, I think just really makes this the sweetest thing that you can offer. And like really making sure that you're
Absolutely.
doing that.
Well, and I love that you said that. I was giving a talk last week about what should business owners be doing as they prepare for 2026, especially if they've never really talked about themselves and haven't built their personal brand. And in line with what you were saying, my recommendation was find 10 to 20 thought leaders, film examples of work that you find inspiring. Now you can curate that work and you could talk about it, right? As a photographer, you could look at whether it's Ansel Adams or whoever you believe and love looking at from a photography standpoint. You could talk about why you love that style, especially if it's similar to your style, right? And what inspired you because people like to work with people. So they want to get to know you. But sometimes that's scary. So you can put yourself out there by talking about great films, why you liked a certain picture, maybe a picture you took on your phone out at Christmas at a crazy neighborhood Christmas light thing. And you're like, hey, look at this. I caught this picture. It really captured the moment. But I do think to your point, I tell my clients, like, we want to break through the noise, not make more noise. So I think about making noise breakers, not noise makers. And I cannot stress enough that one, comparison is the thief of joy. So don't compare yourself to others. You can think about, are they doing something I could learn from? Are they doing something that I could implement that would be useful? But you really want to true back to what are your words? What are your stories? What are your case studies? One of the things that helps me close business is relaying case studies of someone was doing this, here's how I helped them, and this is where they are now. And I think photography is similar, being able to say, look, whatever the moment was, it was really important. They wanted me there to capture it. These are the things I asked that made it even better. And this is what we ended up with. Right. And so, whether that's technique for how you take photos, whether it's how relaxed you make them, so the photos of them jumping in the air or whatever they're doing are really authentic, like that, I think is something that each of us has to continue to go back and go, am I saying my words or am I falling into the noise and the trap of others? And so, when you're thinking about 2026 or at the end of the year, beginning a new year, maybe think about what's something that I've been noodling on, considering, and I haven't spoken about yet. Or the last photo shoot I did. What did I learn? What was really interesting? What did I love about it? And share that. It's okay to share past experiences as a way to communicate your value. But the more you can use your stories, the better. I was on a podcast the other day and I shared how, in my own personal brand exploration, I was sitting with my 8-year-old at the time. This was 12 years ago. So it was right when I first started. And I was like, I have a good idea. Let's ask my son, how do you describe me in 3 words that like 3 things you like about me? And then what are 3 things that you think I need to work on? And he was like, do you want me to alternate my answers? And I was like, oh, I should not have asked this question. But I think that's a good question for everybody to ask. If you're a photographer or any business owner, ask your clients, ask your friends, ask your collaborators and partners, what do they like about working with you? Get other words too. I think personal branding or managing your messaging cannot be done in a vacuum. Like you said earlier, it's an echo chamber. We have to get out and ask people, what did you really like about this session? How did it make you feel? And incorporate those new words into our messaging.
I love that. And even just piggybacking off that a little bit is just like, if you're collecting Google reviews or testimonials kind of throughout the experience, like, I send a questionnaire after
Mhm.
all of our clients that we work with, and also just encourage them to like also fill out a Google review too.
Yes,
Um, that's a great way. It's like people in their own words
totally.
are they're so excited when they have a great experience to fill those out. So if you have like glowing reviews, that's a great thing. Like honestly, even just like screenshotting it or just taking it and just putting it on your website, quoting your clients, that
Absolutely.
gives you a ton of credibility and can also help you figure out the things when you're moving forward into this year that you really want to make sure you continue doing. Because like one thing I like to do at the end of each year, kind of heading into the new year, is like this framework called start, stop, continue. So like, what do I want to start
Absolutely.
doing? What do I need to stop doing? That's maybe like wasting my energy and maybe not moving the needle as much, and then continue doing like what are those things that are really like core to like what we're doing that's been working and we don't necessarily need to touch. Like it's just a well-oiled machine.
Yes.
And so I think that's pretty good and very much in line with what you were saying of just like really looking for those things that inspire you. What are some things that like maybe you've been noodling on and want to try doing? Like I just
Yeah,
love that to give you permission to like try new things and like start something new if you want.
absolutely. Well, I love the start, stop, continue framework. I call it the start, stop, keep, and change. So let's say you normally write a thank you note or a thank you email as a business owner to all of your clients for the year. What if instead you took the best photo from that shoot, you put it on a card, you said happy holidays, you sent them a thank you so much. I really loved working with you this year. And you put a QR code that they could scan and go to give a Google review, right? So I think one of the things business owners, and I also have to do this, total of, you know, cobbler's children have issues, looking at your process and going, what could be an amazing touch point for a client? And if you're not doing anything to say thank you for the year or for working with you or whatever, or just checking in, hey, we did a headshot 3 years ago. If you need an update or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I've reached out to past clients just to check in, not being like salesy or saying, hey, do you need to update your LinkedIn? But just saying, hey, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? And that's turned into business because they're like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about you. So again, think about which touch points in your process for current or repeat clients, past clients could be really cool, like a holiday card or a happy new year or whatever that looks like. Maybe you send them, if it's wedding photography and you send them a box with an box opening where they look at all of the photos from the event or whatever. But in that you put your QR code. By the way, please scan to write a review, right? Think about those touch points where you're leaving or making a great impression where they would want to go write a review and put that in your process. Because I do think asking for feedback, it's one of the most painful things. And yet oftentimes it works out great. So if you're not asking for Google reviews, definitely do that. I'd be curious to get your thoughts. One of the things I've been talking with my clients about is AI, right? And how does that show up in their marketing? And one of the things that a lot of my clients are doing now is adding FAQs to their website because that can help you show up as someone who has answers to questions, but that's literally what AI engines are looking for. So it's not just Google and, SEO and stuff. Now it's GEO. Do you see that showing up? Like, have you heard questions from sort of your community around that?
You know, I feel like the landscape of SEO has shifted so much. I think in the photography space, it's interesting because I think because there's so much imagery, a lot of it is like alt texts, trying to get that showing up
Yes.
in Google, making sure that, yeah, you have relevant information. I do know the FAQ thing that's been around for a while because, Google would use
Hmm.
to, before
Right.
AI would give the AI
Yeah. Yeah.
summary, it would
Yep.
kind of do that, like, you know, try to do the short answers, right, and kind of bring you to the top.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is a conversation. I think it's definitely kind of the beginning stages of it for a lot of people. I know I have on like some of our, service pages, FAQs, and I know that we're ranking pretty well on Google, and it just totally depends on like
Hmm.
what it is you're
Yeah.
trying to like rank for and the keywords. But yeah, I think like looking at like for any service that you're providing, looking at like what are some of the common questions that people are asking, how can I make sure that my website is clearly doing that. And I can't remember the name of the framework, but there's a travel blogger. Her name is Laura Peters. I've had her on before, and she's like amazing. She's taught me almost everything I know about SEO. And just like she's very, very in the weeds with a lot of this. So
Mhm.
I should probably have her on one of these days. But it is definitely an interesting shift in terms of like, oh yeah, it's not good enough just to rank on Google now. And even then, nowadays, it's like, a lot of the first pages of Google are anyway like being taken up by ad space. Like everyone's
Yes,
just
so
pouring
much.
into ad budget in this like strategy season. So like sure you might be ranking on Google, but you know, AI and everything is kind of where a lot of people are searching and how do you shift to that? So that's like a whole other conversation, but
Yeah.
definitely, definitely important.
Yeah.
Like, what have you kind of seen in that? Has it been the FAQ things? Has there been anything else that you've kind of learned about the AI search?
Well, it was interesting. I had somebody reach out in the last month, and I was like, "Oh, how'd you find me?" And she was like, "AI." And I was like, "Huh, interesting." Because I'm a solopreneur. I'm not a Seth Godin. I'm not a William Arruda, who's a well-known personal brand strategist or the one of the founding fathers, if you will, of personal branding. But I was like, "Huh, that's exciting." But I do a lot, right? am on LinkedIn often. I'm posting often. I do lots of podcasts. I do video work. I write content. And so it was exciting to have that show up in AI. A bit nerve wracking, but also exciting. I do think, one of the things about SEO and GEO, like we don't need a million clients. Now, if you have like an online course for how to take great pictures and you want passive revenue, sure. Send your million clients to that for 99 bucks. They can learn how to take a picture. And, that might be true. But in general, for most of us, we want anywhere from 100, 10 to 100, maybe 1,000 clients if you're doing a one-to-many event. Like one of my photographer friends, a family photography event at a school. And so it was like 300 families in 3 hours. I'm not even kidding. It was something crazy. But it was great visibility for her, right? All of a sudden, like you had a lot of people see you, get a picture, like you, and that totally could be new business. So I actually think, I mean, yes, think about AI, but I also think if you only need 10 clients or 100 clients, it's finding those networks that really give you visibility. For me, I'm a part of NABO, which is the National Association of Women Business Owners. They have groups all over the country. I do a lot with my alumni network. A lot of people underestimate the power of alumni networks. I'm also a part of a BNI, which some people are interested in. But I think whatever the group is, I'm part of a giving circle. Like whether it's being on a nonprofit board, whether it's being in a group that gives back, whether it's a business networking group. I do think every year I look at my networks and I try to figure out, am I adding value and are they adding value to my business? And then I reassess because I do think you have to be out and be seen, right? You're out of sight, out of mind if you're not networking in some way. And doing podcasts and things like that is fantastic to expand visibility and reach. And you still have to go out and talk to people occasionally. I hate to break it to everybody, but that's has to be a part of your strategy. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert, they just introduced, I think, ambivert. And I'm like, I think we had enough. I think we had enough distinctions. But it should be a part of your strategy.
Totally. And I think that's really, really solid advice because I think even though a lot of our work lives online, a lot of our connection, social media, like online is essentially a huge connecting space, not something to be
Absolutely right.
ignored. But that's a key thing with like, I think even just like in the post-pandemic world, I know I've talked about this several times,
Mm,
but it's just like people are desiring real connection,
yes.
especially in the world of AI, because
Yes.
when people are just kind of like, okay, was this really written like by this person or are they just emulating this? Like there's just so much out there and it's just
Yeah.
like almost overwhelming where you're like, how do I even process this? And like that's how AI is designed. Like you ask it a simple question and it's giving you an answer this long and be like, oh, do you also want me to do this? And it's just like, it just never ends, right? Like the goal is to get you to keep using it. And then you get all this information at you and you're like, I don't even know what to do with this. It's like so much and it can be very overwhelming. And I think getting in the room with people, they're more likely to remember an
Oh, yeah.
interaction, how you made them feel. And even just that, like what you were talking about before, just like following up with someone, even if it's like at a networking event, be like, hey, I know you were talking about this. Like, how's it going? Like, did you ever like, make progress on this project that you were working
Yep.
on or,
Yep.
these things? And that goes a way long way. And like For what it's worth, I just think that's a easily missed step, especially with younger business owners. I think, like,
Oh,
for
yeah.
me, like, I'm a younger millennial, I'm not quite Gen Z, but, um, definitely finding that I'm kind of in that in between where I'm like, there's people on both sides of me, like, people who are very much, like, all in person, anti-AI, people who are all very, like, TikTok and, like, all online, and they don't even wanna hop on a phone call. So it's like, how do we make space for, the people that, like, are here to be a part of this conversation,
Yeah.
not necessarily, like, omitting one or the other, but making sure that we're also not trying to speak to everyone like, "Oh, I'm all in, only TikTok," or, "Oh, I'm only gonna meet in person." Like, you kinda have to find that balance. So, anyway, I feel like we're just in such an interesting shift in the world, all this to say.
Oh, 100%. I mean, last week I was talking, I was a talk I was mentioning earlier, and if you're a business owner trying to market, there are 5 generations you could be talking to. And so if you're on TikTok selling photography, great. Especially if it's for wedding photography, that might be. However, if the grandparents are paying for it or the parents are paying for it, maybe they need to see you somewhere else, right? Whether
Mm.
it's at a wedding trade show, whether it's finding an event manager who has you as their go-to photographer, it's building that network of people who will bring you into the fold. A digital marketing company who is constantly updating. They need new headshots for their clients, but they don't have a photographer. I have a digital marketing company will do media days. They need photographers, right? Because they're either doing photos or video. I mean, video obviously is huge. And so I would encourage folks to think about what's your learning agenda for 2026. So it's one thing to talk about, here's what I know, here's what I'm going to keep doing, change or stop. But if you think about what are you going to start doing, do you need a new skill to learn how to do that? Right? What might you do differently this coming year that you just hadn't tried in the past? Whether it's a new channel. For me, I was talking about doing more video and just casual video, like hold up the iPhone, record, and go. And although I grew up in the fine arts and love being on stage, that still is a challenging thing to do, right? Just to turn the camera on and go. I mean, 30 takes later, maybe you'll be okay. But it is something that people struggle with. So I also think consider what do you want to learn and do differently? How do you want to apply that? And I really do believe thinking about what really are the problems that are out there and then how can I solve them? Right? People still want to have pictures. People still want to have memories. Whether it's, I was just actually talking to my husband before coming down here, like, do we want to do the holiday family photo? Do we want to hire a professional? Because honestly, yeah, like I'd kind of like that. So again, I think, you get what you pay for. And so the more you can communicate the value, the more you can really charge what you're worth. And once you start, maybe it's a referral program, maybe you haven't done that before and you want to try that next year. There's lots of cool things to do. To your point, now is a good time to step back and give yourself some space to just think about your business. That'd be a huge thing I would recommend. There's a good book called Deep Work. It's on my shelf somewhere. And it's all about this idea of you have to set aside hours to really think about something, not 15 minutes, not an hour, but your brain actually needs to not be multitasking. And so now's a good time over the holiday season where you're doing strategy to really step back and think about that. But I would schedule that into your calendar on a regular basis. Like I color code my calendar, I time block my calendar to manage myself to make sure I'm doing the things I need to for my business, whether it's following up with past clients, prospecting, working on current client stuff, family time. I don't put exercise on my calendar. I probably should, but I think time is the biggest thing that we're always fighting against. And so how do you figure that out? I think is a good thing because most people's calendars are pretty empty because we had our recurring meetings go through the end of the year. And maybe in the photography space, it's totally different and everybody's booked. But if you're not, like now's a good time to start blocking that time to think and really invest in your messaging or in yourself or getting Google reviews, whatever it is, getting feedback as you head into 2026.
I love it. And yeah, I love Cal Newport. I also read his digital
Yes.
minimalism book. So good.
Good.
highly recommend just like finding that space to unplug. And I think kind of on that topic of AI, I think a lot of us are losing that skill of like deep thinking, deep work. Like you have almost any answer you want at the tip of your fingers, right? And you can have AI
Yeah,
coach you in a certain way, do all this. And I think though when we're not using our brains as much, over time it's all gonna sound the same. It's all gonna sound the same. We're gonna lose that
absolutely.
creativity. We're
Yeah.
gonna lose so much of it. And I think AI is a good tool and I think it's something that can definitely help save you time
Yeah.
or make you money in some different ways. But there's gotta be some like give and take. And there's gotta be some like, well, how do I want to be remembered? And like, how do I actually want to like
Yeah.
take pride in the work that I'm doing and enjoy this and also feel like, oh, wow, I like actually did that. Like, I'm going to be way more proud of something that I created myself than I am with something that like I just had an AI prompt do. Like,
Well,
and
you're right. And AI makes it so easy. And yeah, there's already scientific data that shows when you're using AI, you are not using the critical thinking part of your brain. And once you start to not use that muscle, it gets harder to use. And so, to your point, a whole nother reason to do legacy thinking, like what's the legacy I'm leaving? What's a really cool new thing I really want to do? Like maybe ask AI for ideas or research, but it's incumbent upon us as humans and business owners and entrepreneurs. We have to think for ourselves. And maybe one way to combat that is invite a few people over and you're all doing the critical thinking together and you've got an accountability partner. But I think it's very easy to get stuck in the space of AI and feel like it's giving you value and saving you time. However, it's at the expense of your own critical thinking and creativity.
totally. And one of the things I just talked about was just like setting up like a retreat for yourself. Like
Yeah.
grab this book, grab deep work, grab digital minimalism, like think through like kind of as you were talking about earlier, just like what are some of the skills or maybe mindset shifts that you want going into the next year? Grab a book, book yourself like a weekend retreat or just even go during the week if you have the flexibility with your own schedule. Like book something or do a staycation where you just go to a coffee shop, cozy up for a day, and
Yes.
you turn off your phone and just read, write, reflect. Like all those things. Like I think just the more you can use your brain and like provide some space for you to do that, that's where you're gonna have that clarity going into the year. And maybe that's like a super nerdy thing for me to say, but I'm a huge proponent of it. Like big nerd here, big proponent of using your brain. Like that I think is just so important.
Well, I mean, I've embraced my nerdiness the older I get. I think it's critical to give yourself space to think about what you want. If you really could design your day, your week, your month, and not start with business first, but put your personal goals like exercise. I'm just coaching myself. Family time, right? Friend time. Because you only have 168 hours in a week. So how are you spending them? And then fill in the business, right? One of the things I did this year was I take Fridays off. That doesn't mean I'm not working, but I have no meetings on Friday. And for 2026, my goal is Monday and Friday, no meetings, right? Because I need that time to do deep work. I might need that time to do work also, like not just on my business, but for clients. But not having meetings is important. There are personal reasons too, but I think part of the reason we chose to do our business is we're passionate about what we do. And at the end of the day, we don't want to become a slave to our business. We want our business to serve our needs and work for us. And early on, that can be tricky because you're like, I'm just in the hustle. I got to make money. But I think the more you can plan your work, then you can work the plan.
Totally. And that's the thing that I think ends up on the back burner for us business owners. It's like, oh, I went to work for myself and left my 9 to 5 only to work 24/7, right? And
Yeah,
it's just like
exactly.
there's
Wait a
always going to
minute.
be
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people who aren't in this space, they don't get it. They're like, "Oh, so you can sleep in," or "Oh, you could do that." Like, there are perks, right? But there's also that discipline you need to have. And not only when it comes to the work that you're doing, but also the rest that you need and the time off and
Yes.
the stepping away from the desk, which my husband, so he works with me, so we do photo and video together. So you
Awesome.
can imagine it's two of us, right? And how much of our conversations can be just about business or ideas or the
Yes.
clients that we're working with and the films he's editing or photos I'm done with and like things like that. It's just like, when you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like you work a day in your life, but it also means you work every day in your life when you're passionate about it
Yeah.
and you're self-employed. It's like really, really hard to find that line. So yeah, no, definitely taking those time off. I also did the Fridays off this year and like not having anything committed. The last 2 years I've actually each summer had a month where I had no client facing work. And so like the whole month of July off 2 years ago. This year I did kind of like a partial in July, partial in August, and that was really a good like change of pace for sure. And when you think about like you're working for yourself, why wouldn't you be the best boss? You know, create that space, let yourself like think and
Yes.
just kind of dream big and um enjoy those perks, but also like have it work for you and in your favor.
And it is hard. I mean, I think as a society, we talk about what is success and it's making this much money or all of these things. But at the end of the day, it's not. It's about what you want success to look like for you. And that changes over time, right? I mean, um, right now, I want to have more time carved out to spend with my husband and my younger son who's still at home. My older son is at college, and I'm like, this is crazy. We're going to be empty nesters. Like, we need to spend time together as a family as much as we can and really enjoy those moments. My son's coming home from college this week, and I'm so excited. He's an extrovert like me. Everybody else in my house is introverts. So I'm like, thank you for being here. But you have to create that space. And so I'm thrilled to be able to say, yes, I can take off the next 2.5 weeks. You do have to recharge because you will burn out. That is no doubt, unfortunately. And even if you think you're doing okay, sometimes if you step back and really ask, how am I feeling? Is this the life I want right now? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes, I mean, as much as I do personal brand work for other people, earlier this year, I took like 4 months off from LinkedIn, actually from all social media, because I was like, it wasn't that I wasn't on it. I was on it, doom scrolling, but I just didn't want to post content. I just was not feeling it. And now I'm in a better spot. And I'm like, okay, this is what I want to say. But at the time I was like, I don't actually want to say anything at the moment. If I do, I'll get in trouble. Right.
The algorithm
Right.
will be mad.
Yeah. We also just need to give ourselves grace and space to make sure we still love what we're doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like take the time off, enjoy it with family, like whatever you need to do to
Yes.
kind of transition to the next year. And I think that's so true because it's like I've reflected over my business over the last several years of just like sometimes you have those very financially motivated goals. And I've looked at some of the years where I've made the most money and I'm looking back and I'm like, those were some of the years I actually missed out the most on my life though. I wasn't there for my nieces and nephews. I
Yeah.
didn't travel as much. I didn't get to enjoy birthdays and weekends with friends. And, there's a trade-off to everything and a cost to everything. And more money at a certain point doesn't equal more happiness. And so when you really bring it back to your purpose, whether that's your faith, your family, anything else that like really just like makes you feel so like grounded and like gives you meaning and excited to wake up every day, that's the big thing to reconnect with. And I think kind of transitioning back to what we've been talking about this whole time of just like, your branding and, heading into the next year, making sure you're really hitting that on the head, this reflection and all of this, I think has just been such a great conversation, of just a
Yeah.
lot to think about, lot to just chew on and really align yourself as you go into the new year. So I've been really enjoying this as we're kind of wrapping up this conversation, because I know it's obviously your time is valuable and this has been so much wealth for people to kind of take away. Is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with just as they're kind of doing their own reflecting?
I mean, I think the exercise I did when I first started my company, as I went and found, so my mom had a drawer of photos, not digital, not on a computer, like hundreds of photos. And I went and pulled out the 10 pictures that meant the most to me. And that helped inform the values behind my business, the origin story behind my business. And so, whether they're digital or physical, maybe look back. What are the 10 most important pictures that capture what matters to you? And it could be, again, it captures a feeling or a value or a story that you think would be relevant for your clients and your audience, your potential clients to know. Because I think that could be an awesome thing to write about, do a video about, and share, whether it's important memories that people forget to capture, and this is why they need a photographer, Or if it's just sharing, these are the 3 photos that's why I started my business. Family, memories, dot, 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 whatever. But I think it's important to have an origin story. It's important to be able to tell your story, not be vulnerable to a point where, like, I'm not talking about like crying on video or anything. I just mean share who you are, because the more people know you, the more they'll like and trust you. So that would be my recommendation for some fun exercise to do, but it also might lead to some really good content and storytelling about yourself.
Yeah, and just kind of like, again, holding on to what those values are for you and
Yep.
yourself. I
Yes.
love this. Well, Jen, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or learn more, where can they find you and what types of things do you offer?
Sure. They can definitely find me on LinkedIn. That is my favorite channel. And do connect with me. You can just say, hey, heard you on the podcast. Love to connect. I do complimentary consults because I love what I do so much. So even if you just want to have a quick call to talk about, hey, here's what I was thinking in the new year, you can go to brandmirror.com and sign up for a consult. You can also go to LinkedIn and do that too. But I do lots of one-on-one strategy sessions. And then a lot of times people will hire me for retainers to help them really build out a reputation roadmap of how do I want to show up. But my job is just to help people figure out their why, figure out their purpose, and tell that story.
I love that. Well, Jen, thank you so much for just being on the podcast today. And for everyone listening, go check her out. We'll have everything linked in the show notes, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.